friends, and welcome back to this channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be the Q&A video celebrating reaching 400 subscribers. I put out a few community posts as well as some posts on Instagram asking for questions for this Q&A, and you all definitely sent them to me, so thank you for that. I have written all of the questions down on scraps of paper here and got them in a bowl folded up, and we're just going to do a little pick and choose. But before we start with that, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed since I started this YouTube channel. I have loved interacting with you all, talking with you all in the comments, and I've really had a lot of fun making these videos as well and really delving deeper into my reading and getting to share that with you. So thank you. First question. This is from Shelly over at Shelly-ish. She asked me on Instagram, what is your favorite snack? I think I'm gonna have to go with, I really love tzatziki dip, and dipping cucumber or carrot or chips into tzatziki dip is probably my favorite snack. Okay. Jessica Hartle, sorry. In one of your last videos you mentioned you were at a job that drained you. I was in the same boat until June and you left it. Curious as to what kind of job it was. Without going into too much detail, I was an executive assistant in a very corporate environment, and it just ended up being a very toxic work environment. I had started out with one team and they were not willing to let me go when I decided that I wanted to move over to another team to support. So there was often very much a tug of war between these two teams, these two sides. Being pulled in all different directions and really no sign of that stopping after 11 months. Me having asked repeatedly to be fully signed over to this other team so I could actually do the job that I interviewed for. Being consistently very stressed out, working 50 to 60 hours a week, staying late at the office to make sure all of the projects got done. I finally reached a breaking point after 11 months of that and having an instance where, because of many different reasons, I ended up needing to stay until 1 in the morning at the office in order to finish a project that would have legal repercussions if it wasn't finished. And when I then pointed out that I should not have to be staying at the office until 1 a.m. and why wasn't my transfer happening, I was the one that got in trouble. In the end, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I decided, you know what, I'm not willing to sacrifice my mental health or my physical health further for this job, so I quit that back in July. And have been on the job hunt ever since. For anyone else out there that may need it, if you are working a job that you're having issues at and it's a workplace that has thousands of employees and only one person in HR that is virtually impossible to get a hold of, run. Okay. NeoLX asked, how and where do you acquire books, and how/where do you get rid of books when you don't want them anymore? Great question. So when I am buying books, I'm currently on a book buying ban. When I am buying books, I often like to look for them in used bookstores. I find sort of the hunt really enjoyable for that, but if I'm looking for a specific book or I want to buy something new, I use bookshop.org. I prefer that as an alternative to Amazon. A portion of their proceeds go to support local bookstores, so I feel really gratified knowing that that's happening while I'm searching for a specific book that I may not be able to find in my local used bookstores. And as far as what I do with books that I no longer want, I generally will let my friends who read a lot know, hey, these are some books that I'm going to be getting rid of. Do you want any of them? If so, take them, they're yours. And if not, I will donate them to my county library's book sale, which the proceeds of that go to support the library programs. And then also sometimes I will donate them to thrift stores and used bookstores for credit. I quite often get rid of books if I know that they are not ones that I want to revisit or were absolute favorites or would like to loan out to other people, simply because clearly I'm already at a lack for space, and also I'd prefer that somebody else got to use and enjoy that book rather than having it sit unused on my shelves. Next question is from Katie at Katie's Shelf Life, and she's asked me, if you could live in any fictional world, which would you choose and why? Oh, that's a hard question. I feel like a lot of the fictional worlds that I really love reading about are not nice ones to live in. But let me think. If we're going to fictional worlds that are not just books, I'm a huge fan of Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli films, so I think I'm gonna go with either My Neighbor Totoro or Castle in the Sky. Those are two worlds that I can definitely see myself living in and not coming to too much harm, thankfully. Heather Gregg asked, how does the experience of running a booktube channel compare to your expectations? It's a really cool question. I'd say that the reality actually matched up pretty well with the expectation or the fantasy. I've had a really lovely time making booktube videos and getting to talk with you all. It's been an experience where I feel like I've gotten to stretch myself creatively, making videos, but also focus and become much more aware of what I'm reading and really picking apart and dissecting it so I can then speak coherently about it to a camera and to you all. I feel like it's made me a much more analytical reader, which I think in turn is helping me as a writer, really being able to focus in on and identify things that I do and don't enjoy with storytelling, with poetry, learning how to give voice to those thoughts and then also using that to reflect on the stuff that I'm writing. I think as far as things that don't match up, it's a small thing, but sometimes I'll have sort of a creative vision in my head for, say, a reading vlog or a graphic that I want to create in a video, and going to make that the reality. Sometimes I don't always know what I'm doing, and either I have to jerry-rig something or it doesn't quite end up the way that I want it to be visually, or I make a note for next time if I'm doing this, I'd like it to turn out like this instead, and just sort of that like learning curve and experience of video making and editing, not always being able to bring the mental vision to life in the video that I'm making. But I definitely think I'm getting a bit more confident with video editing, graphics, that kind of a thing, and I've really enjoyed that process. So next question. This is from my sister when I was asking for questions over on Instagram, and I posted the questions with a photo of our kitty. She asked, why is she the most pretty kitty in the whole universe? I don't know, she just is. Jessica Hartle asks, where do you currently live and where did you grow up? So I'm not going to give an exact answer for this just because I don't want to triangulate my location, but I will give sort of a general answer to this. I grew up pretty close to Washington, D.C. I live in Maryland, and I currently live pretty close to where I grew up. So I hope that that's an okay answer to your question. Chris Joyner asked, what got you into reading and what genre of history do you like? Ooh, okay. What got me into reading, I don't necessarily have specific memories of this, and I asked my parents the other day, do you remember what book I first read on my own? And they couldn't remember, but I do know that my parents read to me quite a lot when I was younger. I have memories of my mom and I sitting on the couch and her reading one of the larger chapter books to me, usually one that she read growing up, piquing my interest to go out and explore some chapter books of my own. If you're interested in learning about the chapter books that I read at a very young age, I will link the evolution of a reader tag video that I did up in the cards. And then as far as history goes, you've opened Pandora's box, my friend. I'm sorry. I was a history major. I adore history. Something that I would like to include a little bit more of on this channel in the future if I can. But there were a number of historical topics that I tended to focus on when I was studying for my history degree, that being mainly Civil War and Reconstruction history in the US, World War I history in Europe, as well as the Russian Revolution. I would say as far as time periods go, I really enjoy focusing on about the 1850s to the 1930s. You didn't ask this, but I will tell you, my favorite historian is David Blight. He is a professor at Yale University and writes and teaches about the Civil War and Reconstruction. His intro lecture series on the Civil War that he teaches at Yale was recorded several years ago. You can listen to it for free on Apple Podcasts. If you're interested in history, I highly recommend that you do it. He's very much a storyteller. His voice is wonderful to listen to, and I think he just does a phenomenal job with it. I think often people think of history textbooks as being rather dry, rather boring, but David Blight's textbooks are just so beautifully written in places. I've been brought to tears reading some of his books on the Civil War and specifically historical memory and the Civil War. In fact, one of the future tattoos that I want is actually a line from one of his books, which I will save for later. But that is how much I enjoy him as a historian, and I would highly recommend that you check him out. Let's see. Okay, so my partner Erin sent me a question on Instagram, and that is, What book/story would you love to see as a graphic novel? I think I'm gonna have to go with The Grace Keepers by Kirsty Logan. It's been several years since I read that book, but I just remember the story being beautiful and haunting. It's set in a world where most of the earth has been covered by water, so there is very little physical ground space that's left. We follow two women, one who is a circus performer with a pet bear traveling around on a circus boat, and the other is what's known as a grace keeper or a grave keeper or grave tender, because there is very little ground that is left when people die. They are sort of given a burial at sea, and their graves are marked with bird cages that have birds inhabiting them. And so she is sort of the keeper and the tender of these graves and these birds, and sort of keeping these people's memories. And it's about sort of their stories starting to get entwined. But I just remember that story and the world in it being like eerie and haunting and yet incredibly beautiful. So I feel like it could make a really interesting and gorgeous graphic novel. Next is a question from Grace over at Books and Cooks, and she asked me, what other hobbies do you enjoy outside of reading? Great question. I really love gardening. I also really enjoy cooking. I enjoy writing, and a hobby that I've gotten back into recently is singing. I was trained as a soprano for several years, mainly choral singing, but at the moment I'm definitely trying to expand the range of what I can do, different styles, different songs, and I'm having a lot of fun with that, and it's bringing me a lot of joy. So, okay. Becky over at the Tome Gnome asked, what is your favorite piece of book-related memorabilia that you own? Okay, so in truth, I don't think I actually own that many book memorabilia items, which is odd for me. I don't know if this counts, but a few years ago my partner gave me these little tree spirit figurines that are in the Miyazaki film Princess Mononoke, which I adore, and this little guy sits on my desk. Peggy from Peggy Checks It Out asked, if you could read a book again for the first time, which would you read? That's a really interesting question. I think there are a number of books that I've read over the years that I adore, that I think in part were so impactful because of the time in my life that I read them. So if I was to read them for the first time at this point in my life, I don't know if they would have the same impact. But there is a book that I read in high school that I'm planning to reread either this year or next, called Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. And it's a memoir of her experience of the Iranian Revolution seen through the lens of a number of the Western classics that she was teaching her students at the time. I remember it had a huge impact on me when I read it in senior year of high school, I think, on my own. So if I was to go back and erase that memory of having read it in high school, I think I would still really enjoy that book if I read it for the first time today. Melissa My Bubbles asked, about how many books have you read in your adult lifetime? So actually I can give you a pretty accurate answer to this question. I've been using Goodreads since 2012, so I have a record of how many books I've read since I was 18, so I guess we'll consider that the age of an adult. And since 2012 I have read 783 books as of filming this January 31st, 2023. So another question from my partner Erin. What was the most difficult yet rewarding book you ever read? Maybe one you almost quit but didn't. This is a good question. I think my answer for this question is actually going to be one of the textbooks that I read for, it was my Civil War and Reconstruction class when I was in undergrad, and that is Reconstruction by Eric Foner. I'm forgetting the subtitle of it, but it's a big, massive, chunky book, very in-depth study on the events of Reconstruction in the US, the period following the Civil War, why things happened the way they did, and the repercussions that have sort of been left behind for the United States and its aftermath. I think the Reconstruction period is a period that is sorely undertaught in the United States. I think it's a period of US history that has strongly shaped US society and US politics since its occurrence, and I don't think it is widely taught enough just how much, if you'll pardon the language, just how much fuckery happened during that period and how it has been instilled in a lot of the institutions that remain in the US today. But that book was a difficult read, one, because it was a chunky book. It was difficult in the sense of subject matter. It was a very violent period, but it was also during a semester in undergrad that I just was taking a lot of reading heavy classes, so I was a little bit overwhelmed, but I felt really gratified when I ended up finishing it at the end of the semester. It felt like a big accomplishment. There were definitely several times where I wanted to skip the reading, but I wanted to get through it, one, because I needed to for class and final exams, but also just even though the subject matter was difficult, I felt like I needed to bear witness to it. Just because a historic event is difficult or upsetting, I don't think that means we should shy away from it. I think it is all the more reason to bear witness and do our best to understand why it happened and make sure that we don't repeat ourselves. Carla Karen Reads on Instagram asked, "Nosy me, what are you doing for a living?" Well, I sort of answered this in a previous question, but most of the jobs that I've had in my adult life have been sort of administrative secretary, administrative assistant, executive assistant, that kind of a thing. Aside from the summer that I was a staff member for a traveling circus theater group of high schoolers that traveled around the US, most of my jobs have been pretty mundane. Jessica Hartle asked, "Do you prefer audiobooks, a physical book, or digital book, and why?" Great question. I really enjoy all of them. I think if I had to pick one, a physical book is going to be my pick. I love physically holding a book in my hands. But I've really grown to love audiobooks as well as ebooks for different reasons. Mainly, I would say for convenience, being able to still read if I'm commuting, if I'm going on a walk, if I'm cleaning the house. And then digital ebooks have been great for things like graphic novels that I get out from my library. I think in the past 2 years, I've definitely opened up and widened the scope of things that I read, due largely in part to audiobooks and ebooks. So I definitely have a really big love for them. Monica from Dog-Eared Musings asked, "Favorite snack to eat while reading?" So earlier I said my favorite snack was tzatziki sauce with cucumbers and carrots and chips. But for reading, I need a one-handed snack. So I think I'm gonna have to go with trail mix. I really love trail mix, and it's something that you can just, reach over and continue to read with the book in hand. Either trail mix or peanut M&Ms. I love a good peanut M&M. Katie from Katie's Shelf Life asked, "What does your ideal day look like?" Ooh, I like this question. I'm gonna have to say it definitely involves spending some time with loved ones, my partner, close friends, getting to cook something together or going out for a nice meal, wandering around on a beautiful day, going to a museum or a gallery of some sort, having time to do a little reading or writing, maybe at a cafe. Yeah, I would say all of those are definitely elements that would consist of an ideal day for me. I think as I've gotten older, my ideal day has changed a little bit. It's less about certain activities done, although those definitely factor in, but it's mainly about getting to spend quality time with people that I really care about. So I think that would be the main focus of an ideal day for me. And certain activities or events sprinkled on top, are just an extra bonus. Monica of Dog-Eared Musings also asked, "Book you have the biggest beef with?" Oh dear. I think I'm gonna mention two. The first one being The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I absolutely loathe that book. I also do not like Donna Tartt as a writer. I have read 2 of her books and have no plans to read any future ones by her. I have put my foot down. As far as The Secret History goes, Donna Tartt is definitely a skilled writer in many aspects, but the overall effect of the book was just very lackluster for me, very infuriating, and the message or the main theme of the book I found really disconcerting. This sort of idealization and worship of this elite, white, wealthy cohort that really can do whatever they want, including murder, and not have any consequences. Overall, I found The Secret History to be rather dry, convoluted, and boring, and also infuriating. And then the second book that I think I have the biggest beef with is Hamlet by William Shakespeare. I mentioned that in my next 5 classics that I want to read tag, and I want to be clear, I did read the entire play of Hamlet. I did comprehend the events in Hamlet. And I still stand by my claim that he is a whiny edgelord with mommy problems. Again, I think in the similar vein to one of the reasons that I really don't enjoy The Secret History is it is sort of lauded as this epitome of literature, and really, in my opinion, it's not. Hamlet is by no means a noble character. In fact, the tragedy of Hamlet is that he is a whiny, depressed edgelord that is so blinded by his own hubris that he gets himself and his entire family killed. Yeah, I get the fact that he is grieving the death of his father and the betrayal of his mother, but like, dude, maybe like pull your head out of your ass and actually see what's going on, and don't fuck things up. I have very strong feelings about Hamlet. Have I read and adored other Shakespeare plays? Yes, Hamlet is just not one that is for me, and I'm sort of infuriated by people insisting that it is Shakespeare's best work when it clearly isn't. Like, for reference, the plot of Hamlet is so convoluted that the main character is kidnapped by pirates at one point, and that's not even a major plot point. Next question. Jessica Hartle also asked, do you currently read middle grade or YA? The answer is I'm definitely getting more into middle grade. It's something that I started to read a little bit more of last year and really enjoyed myself, so I would like to continue that this year. As far as YA goes, I don't usually read YA books. I'm just not a fan of YA that much anymore. However, I will provide a caveat to that. I've really enjoyed several YA graphic novels recently, so I guess the answer to that is yes, I definitely plan on reading more middle grade, and I dabble in YA graphic novels. This is another question by Jessica Hartle. She asked, what is your ideal dream job? Well, I think if I was to answer that honestly, I would have to say a writer, but I'm working up to that point. We're not there yet. But as far as realistic dream job in the adult world, I would say something that feels laid back enough that I don't get super stressed out, where I'm not asked to work tons of overtime, but I still feel fulfilled and purposeful and like I'm making a difference, and that the company, the person that I'm working for, is looking to make a positive difference in their industry or in their community, where I feel like the professional skills that I've developed over the years are put to good use. And again, I feel like I have purpose and I'm appreciated. So I don't know if that has a specific job title. I'm definitely still looking for it, but yeah, that would be my ideal job, aside from being a writer. This next question is from Becky at the Tome Gnome, and she asks, okay, I know I already asked you one, it's okay girl, but I am in a planting mood and need to know, what are you planning to garden this season? And would you ever consider making some gardening vlogs? Short answer is yes, I'm definitely planning on making some more gardening vlogs in the future. If you don't know, I have a very large garden currently in my backyard, or rather my parents' backyard, and the current situation with the garden is last spring I had a bunch of friends and family help me redo the garden a bit, put in some more beds, redo the walkways, bring in all new soil for these raised beds, and it was a lot of work, you know, moving things around, building things, hauling in all of the mulch and the dirt, and I'm really grateful to everyone who helped me with that. Unfortunately, the dirt that I ordered was supposed to be a mix of topsoil and some good composted leaves, but come to find out, the reality is that the soil that got delivered is really bad quality. I keep finding bits of glass and tile and plastic and all sorts of weird things in it. Like, I have no idea where this person got this dirt from. And as a result, we've had some issues with growing things in it in the past year, and it's been kind of frustrating. I think one of the things that I really want to do before the growing season this year is just get a couple of soil tests and send them off and just see what's actually in the soil, what needs to be added to the soil, and seeing if there isn't some way that we can amend and start to heal what's already there. As far as things that I'm looking forward to growing for the spring, the cooler months, I definitely enjoy growing a lot of beans, lettuce, kale, and root vegetables. So I'm hoping that I can get the soil amended at least a little bit and have some success with those this spring. But yes, the answer to your question is yes, there's definitely more garden and plant content coming. I think I would really like to include in a future vlog the process of sorting out and figuring out what seeds I want to plant when. I'm a really big fan of looking for and planting heirloom seeds. I think they are so fun and unique, and you get some really interesting varieties and flavors of just sort of everyday vegetables that you wouldn't normally find in the grocery store. Things like purple and red carrots and orange okra, and heirlooms often come with a history and a story to them, which is another thing that I love about them. Big question here, and this is from AM Mikesel. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, and they asked, I saw in another video that you have a cat. What's their name and how long have you had them? If you had to compare them to a fictional character personality, who would they be? Great question. So the family cat that we have, her name is Molly, and she's about 12 years old. We've had her for 11 years now. Her brother unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. His name was Sherlock, and he was the sweetest boy, but we're still really glad to have Molly around. If I had to compare her to a fictional character, so I was thinking about, so she's a very anxious kitty, and she's definitely gotten better over the years that we've had her. She was a rescue stray cat. She is both very anxious but very cuddly and loving, but also a little bit mischievous sometimes. So for whatever reason, I guess the combination of fictional characters that came up in my head was the little blue mouse from Bear in the Big Blue House, if anyone remembers that, and Winnie the Pooh. And the last and final question goes to Kai. Kai Roan, who is also on BookTube, asked, what's your sign / personality type / aura? So my sign is Gemini, Sun, Libra rising, and Capricorn moon. I will pop my birth chart up here if anyone is interested. I'm a little bit into astrology, but not super deep into it. Outside of the 3 major placements, the majority of my chart is actually Gemini and Capricorn placements. Do I know what that means? No. But if you do, have fun with that. As far as my personality type, I am an INFJ if we're talking Myers-Briggs. And then as far as aura goes, I don't know. I actually did just sort of a generic personality aura test on the internet, and it said that my aura was purple. I don't know if that's accurate, but there you go. But that is all, my friends. Thank you so much to everyone who sent me questions. I really appreciate it. I was definitely worried that there wouldn't be questions when I asked for them for a Q&A, but you all definitely delivered. Thank you so much. I've had so much fun making YouTube videos the last couple of months, and I've gotten so much joy out of creating and connecting with you all about books. It has really meant the world to me, so thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you can give this video a like. That apparently helps. And the next video coming out should be, I think, the second part of my January wrap-up, so stay tuned for that. I will see you all in my next video. Bye!